Welcome back to the State of Love and Trust. This week, a bit of a musical detour. We're not talking Pearl Jam, but I am talking to two gentlemen from a band out of Wales whose music might hit me right here just as well. I'm telling you, these guys are solid. And they are.
Hey, I'm Chris Buck.
And I'm Tom Hollister.
And we're in the band Cardinal Black.
And this is the State of Love and Trust.
I'll be ready when you wanna come.
Welcome to another episode of the State of Love and Trust. It's a Pearl Jam podcast, but today it's a Cardinal Black podcast. That's right. I'm your host, Jason Kerepesi. Paul is off today. He's actually on vacation, so I'm riding solo, but I got two wonderful guests waiting in the wings. Before we get to that, though, if you are watching here on YouTube, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications, all that good stuff. And if you're listening only, as Paul would always say, feed that algorithm. Like, review, subscribe. Yeah, that's what it is, right? Feed the algorithm. I don't have stickers to throw today, but you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, before we get into it, if you would be so kind as to support our May 2025 fundraiser, it benefits the JED Foundation, and they work really hard to strengthen mental health for teenagers and young adults. They work with schools, and they really foster great community and support for those suffering mental health struggles like anxiety or even suicidal thoughts. So JED Foundation is a great place to send your money this month, in the month of May. As we always say, $5 or more to that wonderful cause. It gets you stickers and a pin, if you are feeling generous towards us, if you want to say thank you to this show, Patreon, you can buy something in our pod shop, and we really do appreciate that. That all being said, let's get to it. We got a hell of a conversation ahead with Tom and Chris from Cardinal Black. This week's guests are 2/3 of the Welsh band Cardinal Black. Not yet a fan? You will be very soon. The sonic palette, born from years of playing together, and we'll get to that, yielded a #1 record 3 years ago and has the seal of approval from legends like Peter Frampton and Steve Winwood. Now they're back with their sophomore LP dropping May 23rd. It's called Midnight at the Valencia. And joining me are guitarist Chris Buck and lead singer Tom Hollister. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you, man. Thank you for having us.
Good.
Before we dive in to the heat of the meat, as I like to say, Chris, you graciously sent me some marketing materials to, supplement my own research for this chat. And something stuck out to me. And it's a word. The word is resplendent.
Okay.
I have never heard this word before, so I had to look it up. That's how unlearned I am. So I looked it up, and it says, attractive and impressive through being richly colorful and sumptuous. Is there a better word than sumptuous to describe you guys? Yeah.
That's me in a nutshell, isn't there, really? I can't speak for Tommy, but I'm nothing short of resplendent.
Did you write this, Chris?
I didn't, unfortunately, no.
Oh my God, I thought you did.
It sounds like a very me thing to say, though, so I could legitimately take credit for it. But no, unfortunately, that's our PR team who've kind of come up with that. But I'll back them to the hilt. It's a resplendent album, whatever that means.
Tom, are you a sumptuous person?
In every way possible. I mean, if there was a tick box next to all of those words, I'm ticking all those boxes, baby. Colorful is the high blood pressure. High blood pressure. Yeah, that's about it, really.
Okay.
Yeah, no. Yeah, it's all bollocks, isn't it? I mean, it's lovely and it has to be written, but it's all bollocks, isn't it?
I just never heard the word before. That's how out of it I am. It's like, what the hell does that mean? I'm Googling. Oh, that's fun. So Cardinal Black, you guys have had some success over the last few years, Europe, UK, And then you had the 3-day mini run in the US last year. I got to go to the Troubadour show. It was very cool, as I was telling you beforehand. So you've got a bit of a bedrock here because I believe all those shows were sold out, right?
Yeah.
Pretty cool for your first run. So I don't want to do the whole backstory thing because you've done it to death and people know how to Google, but let's do like a brief Cliff Notes, like summarization of that, 10-year overnight success thing.
So it was, if I'm okay to jump in there, Tommy, it started off life as Tom's university project way back when. That would have been 2010, 2009, 2010. And it was not really intended to be anything more than a kind of one night thing, really. As most things in life. And it turned into a little bit more. Steve Winwood randomly showed up at our first and what was intended to be pretty much only show at that point. Kind of must have not hated it because he invited us to his studio. So one thing led to another, and kind of 18, 19, whatever we were at the time, it kind of felt like a kind of snowball, kind of running out of control. Relatively speaking, looking back, I guess it was all kind of quite mundane and quite slow paced, but at the time it felt a little bit crazy and kind of like we were struggling to kind of keep hold of this behemoth. So we did that for a while, 2010, 2011, then we split, did the whole kind of creative differences thing. Tried to do the big old acrimonious kind of fuck you, never want to see you again, but then prior or simultaneous to that band, we were also in a wedding band to kind of, obviously everyone knows that rock and roll doesn't really pay. So
it was a separate entity. Two separate things.
It was kind of born off the back of that. It was a covers band that kind of spawned original stuff for Tom's university project. And then when the original thing fell apart, we thought, well, kind of as much as we would like to do the whole kind of the big acrimonious split, I'm kind of reliant on you to make money. So I'll see you Saturday in that case then for Janine's wedding. So yeah, Janine! We did that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, shout out Janine. So yeah, we did that for a quite a long period until kind of like the cover of COVID really gave us a little bit of an excuse to kind of dive back into rehearsals and studios, and all of that culminated in launching Cardinal Black then in May of 2021. And yeah, fast forward to today.
So you had you guys have been writing some of the early EP and January Came Close songs over that span, and then only since recorded them around that time when you got back together.
Yeah, Tommy.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we always talk about that first album kind of being an amalgamation of 10 years worth of songwriting. Both from 10 years prior, and then some new stuff on that as well. But yeah, the foundations were there from early on. And that's kind of what we, to just go back over Chris's words there, essentially what we're doing is looking at old stuff saying, well, this is probably too good to not get out of the closet and have a little pop at. So we did it. Yeah, we put Janine to one side. I mean, even that was weird because the covers band, the wedding stuff, like it started to get to the point where I don't know whether you'll agree with this, Chris, but it felt as though people were starting to hire us for our ability to like play original music, and kind of we were starting to get like better known there, I guess, especially Chris. And so you turn up to a wedding and everybody's like, play some of your own stuff. And you're like, well, you and two other people might know what that is. Do you know what I mean? So no, we won't. We'll stick to Nutbush city limits. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yeah, it has been, we were a bit long in the tooth. We've been doing the wedding thing for quite a while, and it kind of, I guess, Tom kind of hit the nail on the head there. There was a lot of material that we worked on back in the day that we had been sitting on and kind of felt was too strong not to at least do something with.
Right.
But yeah, as much as anything else, we're just bored of playing bloody Bruno Mars.
Uptown funk can only be uptown for so long.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so we had the EP, we had the January Came Close, and now soon is Midnight at the Valencia. Now, Chris, you told personal favorites of mine, Mick and Dan, over that pedal show, around a year ago, that you've been currying favor from labels for a while, but you wanted to like maintain some control. The two of you are very hands-on with the logistics. So why have you chosen to be so meticulous in this business approach when you've had all this favor to be curried?
Yeah. I think at the heart of that is a conversation I had with the trio, the band back in the day, the kind of 2010, 2011 iteration of Cardinal Black. Our manager,
you two and Adam?
Yes, yeah, wherever he is tonight. And for a brief period around that time, we were managed by a good friend of mine called Alan Niven, who was Guns N' Roses manager back in the day, had an incredibly kind of rich storied career in his own right, and then through a bizarre set of circumstances ended up managing us. And of the many pieces of wisdom that he kind of imparted on me, one of which kind of really stuck with me and still resonates is that no matter what anyone tells you, nobody really cares about your career as much as you do. And that still rings true, as much as you may be courted by labels or agencies or promoters or whoever it is in this industry, that is constantly this kind of thing ringing in the back of my mind, I guess, as kind of whatever they promise you, whatever they say, however good they make you feel in that meeting, they don't really care about your career. They care about their career, and that's quite right, quite right. So I think we've kind of applied that ethos, I guess, to everything that we've done. And this is our baby, this is, I think if it wasn't a truly new band in the sense that we'd only been doing this 2-3 years, maybe without the shared history or the shared backstory, we probably wouldn't have that kind of shared work ethic and drive and kind of want to control everything, or at least have an element of control or a kind of finger in every pie, relative to the band's business. It just means that I think the more facets of this industry that you understand, the less likely you are to be ripped off or taken for a mug or something, some nefarious kind of cigar smoking label exec coming along and promise you the world and kind of give you nothing. It just... And if nothing else, it kind of it means that everything that the band does earn, which admittedly isn't a great deal, or we kind of turn over a decent amount of money, but obviously it takes a lot to keep a band on the road. So all of that gets invested back into the band, So it's not as though we're kind of rolling in cash here, but it means that anything that the band does generate can be brought back into the band for the betterment of the band and for the advancement of the band, rather than 10% go in there, 10% go in here, 5%, 20%,
So is this why then, because, going back and watching so many interviews and reading so many interviews and just all this stuff, is this why Midnight at Valencia is coming out now when all along it was, beginning of 24, mid 24, autumn 24. Like I was waiting for it. You guys were playing it all this time. Yeah. And then Welcome to the Valencia, the little, like, I call it an EP. I guess it's
kind of teaser EP almost. Yeah.
I was like, where's isn't there more? Why do we wait so long?
I mean, realistically, that was because we were starting to court labels at that point, and we had kind of got to the point of, I guess, the latter part of 2023, talking about touring into 2024, and at the time still using a national promoter in the UK, and then a national promoter in Europe actually as well. And we were kind of on the cusp of doing, let's say, a third London show, going over the same old material that people would have heard for the third time. And we thought, well, we feel the necessity to put something new out for the fans. The promoter was very keen for that to happen, and obviously was right in saying that would drive new ticket sales. We also wanted to keep our powder dry slightly because we thought we were on the cusp of doing something a little bit bigger with a partner as a label. So hence the 3-track EP, which was the equivalent of showing a little bit of ankle, if you will. And we kind of selected 3 songs off the record that weren't, we thought, obvious singles, and then Holding My Breath kind of did very well. And so what do we know? What does anybody know? But,
I thought Holding My Breath was definitely a single type of song.
Yeah,
it's funny. We'd sort of set it aside, as Tom said. We kind of set it aside as, we wanted to release 3 tracks which were strong tracks and kind of representative of the album as a whole, but not necessarily stand on the toes of tracks that may well be singles further down the line if a label did get involved. And of course, then when 30 Tigers come on board, the first thing that they say is, Holding My Breath, that's got single written all over it. We're like, oh, great. Okay, then. Well, we kind of...
What do you know?
The cat is out of that bag, so to speak.
Yeah. So we kind of did that in order to kind of, I guess, justify us waiting a little longer for our fans have been incredible, because we have obviously the best fans in the world, but they're extremely loyal and understanding of the fact that we're quite a new band still, and they've been there from the start and have witnessed our growth, and we feel they're very part of that growth, right? So the idea of saying to someone, look, it's there, it's in the can, and we can use it now, but it's better for the band, infinitely better for the band, if we just slow it down for another 4 to 5 months. When 30 Tigers came on board, the first thing they said was, look, we know that it's ready to go, and we know that you're chomping at the bit to get it out the door, but actually we need at least 6 months rolling to let this breathe as much as it rightly should. So, we decided obviously that was the right move. Hence now it being end of May before it's actually released. But it's you'll have seen quite a bit of leg, I imagine, by the time the record actually comes out. So I'll just
all these analogies with legs.
Second half.
Legs, ankles,
Sorry,
thighs.
Yeah.
Is this an allusion to something? Oh my god.
Yeah, I know. This is this is the reason. This is the reason why you've yet to hear the album. I mean, you've heard it, but
I've heard it. We spoke to friends of ours in a band called James and the Cold Gun. They're also from Cardiff. I don't know if you guys know.
Yeah.
They're a fantastic band. And they were sitting on their new record, which is like out right now, I think, or just about to come out, for a very long time. And I said how does that make you feel? And James Joseph said that he feels some kind of way about that. And I don't know how you guys feel about sitting on this record for. I mean, obviously you've been playing it live, as you said, but for people to hear the pristine studio takes, it's there. Like, how do you feel about having to wait and wait and wait?
It's a little bit surreal, I guess, in the sense that when that record finally comes out, for us at least, it feels like quite an old record.
I was going to say, does it feel old and like?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, the initial excitement that you get, I mean, between finishing January Came Close and actually releasing it was a very short period. We kind of, again, no label involvement. We were doing everything ourselves there, and inevitably you end up chasing your tail a little bit and trying to keep up with, the production deadlines or the kind of the vinyl deadlines, all this kind of stuff that you're working to on a very tight deadline. I remember that for the first album, we had that mastered at Abbey Road. And as impressive as that immediately sounds, the reality of that was that they were pretty much the only people that could fit us in at the deadline that we needed. We were kind of like, okay, we hadn't really factored mastering into this process. It would just been something that kind of, okay, we'll sort that after the mixing is finished. Mixing took a little bit longer than we planned, by which point we were really up against it to get it out on DSPs, make sure that it's on Spotify and Apple Music, etc. By the actual release date, we were like, we pretty much need this mastered in the next day or so. And we kind of called in some favors, having done some stuff for the record at Abbey Road, and they very kindly mastered it at short notice. But that gives you some indication, I guess, as to kind of like the speed of the process for that first record. It was like, right, it's finished mixing, off to master, quick, upload it, it's being released next week. Compare that to this album, obviously. Sorry,
I was just going to say, to the point, where we couldn't get vinyl out at the same time as the other, as the CD release, because there was a backlog off the back of COVID. Production time was so long, and we were like, well, exactly that, right? Do we stall and try and line everything up, or do we just get it out? And it kind of worked because we almost did a second release of the vinyl later on and had a bit more of a resurgence of it. But this album now is a perfect example of kind of everything just chilling out a little bit, taking a breath, and everything kind of falling into line a bit better. So hopefully that works out.
One thing we've kind of been conscious of, as you referenced, we've been playing a couple of the tracks off the record live. We were pretty considered in what tracks that we have played live to date. Obviously, as Tom alluded to, and we've killed the analogy now, but we wanted to show a little bit of leg on the tour. So the US, we did a couple of tracks from the record. We did a couple of more tracks from the record, obviously on the tour that we just completed in the UK last October. So there's been a bit of a drip feed of live tracks, at least in that sense. But still the bulk of the record is, when people actually hear it, will be totally fresh,
So you guys did Your Spark and was it Holding My Breath? What else did you do?
We did Morning Light when you saw us on the Troubadour.
Oh, dude.
Your Spark and Morning Light and Ride Home, first track, and Falling. So there we go, 4 tracks.
Going through the album, I don't know, like 8 times in the last day or so. I gave it the headphones test. I gave it the speakers test here. I gave it the car test. Got to give it the car test. And I'd say Morning Light for me is the current number one. That thing just blooms like a flower. It's fantastic.
It's the drum sound.
I love Morning Light.
It's the drum sound on that. That's just. That's like, I love my drums and the sound of drums and the people who play drums. It's the instrument I wish I could play, and it's my favorite instrument. And I just think the sound we managed to get for that track particularly was just dead and lovely and warm and analog, and it just I hear that first fill. Obviously, you've heard it, you understand there's a little bit of stuff going on just prior to it, and when that drops, it like gives me a little warm hug. And it's weird to answer your question as well about like time elapsed between recording the album and then listening. You do get you get forgiven, I guess, or we'll forgive ourselves a little bit for just almost forgetting about it. And definitely not listening to it. Like I'll speak for myself, but there'll be periods of 3 months or so, and then I'll go, you know what? I'm walking the dog. It's a nice evening. I'll put the record on and I'll give it a blast. Do you know what I mean? And which is a bit self-indulgent, but like you then end up realizing that I think we both agree that, or we all agree that that we've made something that we're really proud of. I think, you know, and is kind of right up our street and does it justice. Like the production value and stuff. I think, you know, we've put a lot more effort into that and a bit more spend into that, frankly. But I think it holds up, you know. So yeah, great. Hopefully it passed your speakers test.
It very much did. It very much did. I'm sure that you guys have talked about this before, but you know, again, this audience here for our show may be a little uninitiated with you guys. Maybe not huge guitar nerds, but I want to talk briefly about Chris, your kind of online presence, the YouTube, the Instagram, fame. Is that the right word? I don't know. But
I don't think so, but I'll take it.
There's a presence there in some capacity, and I want to know because I mean this is how I found you through that episode of That Pedal Show, and I go, Chris, I've seen Chris's videos before. Okay, he's a hell of a player, blah blah blah. And you walk down the path with those guys, and you go, oh shit. And so I'm immediately Googling in the first 10 minutes of that show. But for those who don't know, like how have you guys leveraged, Chris, your platform for the band?
It's an interesting one. When we launched, I think we were very conscious of that, and it gave us a little bit of a kind of leg up. There we go, legs again.
Oh my god!
Yeah, I know. Sorry, need to rethink the title of the record. It gave us a little bit of a head start where I think probably we wouldn't have had that under any other circumstances. Obviously, it was coming off the back of COVID. COVID, for me, I guess, from like a professional standpoint, bizarrely, you know, relative to most of the other musicians I know, actually wasn't too bad. YouTube boomed, presumably because everyone and their mother was bored at home with nothing else to do apart from watch Netflix and YouTube. So YouTube, I think, as a platform kind of did very well out of COVID. And, you know, guitar in general obviously spiked as well. You know, the amount of people buying guitars during COVID, et cetera, et cetera. We all kind of know that. But that gave us a little bit of a kind of leg up, I guess, initially in terms of knowing that if I released something, there would straight away be eyes on it that otherwise might not be there. And it gave us a little bit of a freedom in terms of, me and Tom have spoken about this in the past, in terms of not wanting to go down the usual kind of new band route of, you know, big things coming soon, you know, launching the Instagram page, launching the Facebook page with nothing there and slowly drip feeding and updating all that kind of stuff. We wanted to come strong out the gate. So literally from day dot, there was a small line of merch, there was a website, there were a couple of dates, you know, planned. There was all this kind of stuff. There was an EP in the works, there was videos, there was a single release strategy for the next couple of singles, followed by an EP. So all of that kind of donkey work we'd kind of done. But we knew that straight away putting a video out would be the best way to kind of get eyes on us, literally, because of my YouTube presence. And it seemed to work, you know. Tell Me How It Feels had an amazing response. Oh, yeah. And I think elevated us to a point which probably under normal circumstances, without that kind of YouTube footprint, might have taken a year or so, you know. But it straight away kind of lifts you above the noise a little bit because you have this pre-existing voice, you know. And I wish I could take some credit in terms of having the foresight of, you know, I'd foreseen a global pandemic, and I thought what I need is a YouTube presence to kind of, you know, make sure that.
Were you in Wuhan in mid 2019?
I was actually, yeah. Funnily enough. It was.
Why does Chris have a pangolin? I don't know.
Yeah, it was funny. It's something popped on Instagram the other day. Sorry, Tommy, go on. Off beast.
No, I was going to say, I think the bit that, like Chris, who's far too modest to actually say.
Yeah, by the way, Chris is way too fucking modest. He's a hell of a guitar player.
Don't worry, I'll get to it. I'll get to it. Don't worry.
He's a terrible lover. That's the downside. There's a yin and a yang. He's a terrible lover.
As you well know.
As I well know.
Lonely nights.
Oh my goodness, we're learning so much. Tour stories, boys.
Yeah.
So,
Tom, are there drawbacks to having Chris's notoriety at all, or no? Is it all of a gravy?
Oh no, I don't care. I mean, like he's what we call in the UK a blue tick wanker on Instagram. So it's very nice if you need like tickets to the restaurant or something. Do you know what I mean? But and then I'm really his friend. But other than that, I don't care. But it's what he won't say is that, you know, immediately when we kind of formed this, there was an easy door. And the easy door was to be called, you know, Chris Buck and the Bastards, and do. I
thought it was Chris Buck and the Bell Ends was the term.
I was kind of sorry. Yeah, I didn't know whether I was kind of I was translating for an American crowd then, but I mean, I've said wanker. I think like we could have done the kind of Joe Bonamassa thing. There's nothing wrong with that at all, and we love Joe and played with Joe and blah blah. Right. So, but like. That would have kind of been the easy thing. And I think we would have really seen a crossover in the fan base from Chris. He's absolutely right that, like, I don't think we're touching anywhere near the success of Tell Me How It Feels when we release it if it's not for Chris being in the band. And there was definitely also conscious decisions, really, I think, or maybe subconscious decisions around writing the first album to let Chris shine a little bit, you know, and to have it probably more a jammy blues style album than the second album is. But to his eternal credit, he was the first person to say, I don't want to do that. I want to be in a band. I want to be as anonymous in that band as a normal guitarist would be in that band, until people realize that I'm good for my own reasons, I guess, within the band, you know, like anybody else in it. So, and it's always been, we've tried to always make it about the songwriting first. And when a big solo is needed, a big solo is needed. But ironically, you know, the bigger solos are the ones that kind of light the YouTube guitar world on fire. But the ones that Chris is really well known for are the shorter, hard-hitting solos. You know, tell me how it feels. You know, where that solo is all of 15 seconds or something. Do you know what I mean? But he's very good at that, right? So, so we never had that fight at the outset, and never have had it since with anybody in the band, where it's a case of, well, I want to do this. You know, it's always been what's good for the song, and therefore for the album, and therefore for the band. So, yeah, I mean, we did see a crossover, obviously, but you'd be surprised how little that crossover has been in the early days, because, you know, the constant amount of comments, love him, that Chris will get as soon as he pushes anything that's like a full song from Cardinal Black on his pages, where everybody's like, I don't want to hear the other 2.5 minutes of bullshit. I just want to hear 30 seconds of guitar, baby. Turn it up, you know. But I get it. Like, I think it's naive to think that those two things go hand in hand. We are selling a different product, if you want to put it that way, in terms of, you know, being in a band and everything that comes with that. So, yeah, I think you can take advantage of it sometimes when you want to. And we do that a lot more live, right? And like, if you haven't seen us play a live show, like you alluded to, nobody is going to know who we are on your podcast. So if you're near us in the States and you want to come and watch a live show, we embellish that moment, and we embellish all of those moments, you know, a little bit more than we would in the record. But I think getting carried away allows that to creep into the recorded process. And we were really keen to keep that tight and to make the song as crisp as it could be. You know?
I mean, honestly, I look at Chris is playing as a Trojan horse to just excellent songwriting. And that's how I view
the dog food.
The what?
The medicine in the dog food.
Yeah, exactly. This is the pill pouch, is that what they call it?
Yeah.
The little pill pouch? Yeah. The roll of salami.
That's not what I call it.
Here you go. Spoonful of medicine makes the medicine go down. Anyway. No, but seriously, to me, that's how it was. It was like, oh shit, Chris can play. That's great. Cool. What's this band all about? Holy fuck. So that it was like a dog, like, whoop, you know, moment. And you're right. When I saw you guys at the Troubadour, it was like, let's take all the best parts and then we'll embellish them here and there and there and here. And, you know, you had Tay come out and sing more than she would on the record. Your brother playing little key solos here and there, you know, Adam going nuts. Like, everyone gets a little moment to showcase. And I find that to be really cool. Do you guys notice then when you're playing these live shows, anybody kind of having those aha moments in the crowd that may have come because Chris is going to melt their face off, but then they go, holy fuck, this is like an experience.
I mean, I'll answer that before he gets in, because genuinely, I won't tell it. I won't tell him because it'll make. I'm sure he's not listening to this. But the single most common line I get after a show is, there is a hidden compliment in there, but it's, wow, I came because I heard Chris, and then I kind of stayed for the band. That is what we get all the time, but there are zero egos when it comes to how people get through the door. Chris is the first to say it, however they get through the door, they get through the door. It doesn't matter. So if you want to come because you love guitar, then come. And if you want to come because you like a big fat vocalist, then come for that, but whatever, pay your money and come through the door, and we're all winning, and hopefully, like you say, there are a few strings to the band, I think, the band's bow, if you will, that aren't so obvious, I guess, when you share 90-second reels on Instagram, that we're able to embellish that show. And we grew up in an era, I think, or definitely we were influenced musically by an era where shows were that kind of roller coaster of emotions, and you were brought down into pockets of that, and then you had rocky moments, and you had vocal stripped back piano, whatever it is, and we, in a world where I'm not knocking it, right? There are elements of track that we use for some parts when we can't have a real bagpipe player on the stage, for example. But bands that just completely rely on track and stuff, I think you can lose that a little bit. That kind of nuance difference, that playing with the crowd, that bringing it right down, that taking your time and taking a breath, and then that flat out rock music moment, So hopefully we do a little bit of all of that.
I never know. I'm, I guess, the worst person to judge a live show because I'm not really an avid live music goer, particularly, much to my wife's annoyment, who met me through a gig that we were doing, and I think was very much under the impression that I loved going to shows, and I'm a musician and that's what I do. And the reality is I hate gigs. I'd rather listen to the record. So I'm probably the worst person to judge it. But when I do go to shows, a part of the experience for me is watching what those musicians in that room at that time can create, and what that sounds like, not what it sounds like plus some additional elements, or kind of being very heavily reliant on other stuff. And hypocritical, I guess, because as Tom alluded to there, we've started incorporating a couple of stranger elements into kind of stuff on track, I guess, synth parts or whatever that we can't recreate live. But for the most part, what you see is what you get when you come to see us, and that's part of the fun, and if the wheels fall off, the wheels fall off, but it varies from night to night. And creating the live set is, building a bit of a narrative and telling a story and taking people on a little bit of a journey, not to sound too pretentious. You learn how to read crowds, you learn how to take them up, bring them down when it needs to be, and, kind of take them on this journey.
It's an organism.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, totally.
The whole thing is one organism to me, at least. I think the best shows are an organism where there's a give and a take. My wife went to go see, hopefully,
yeah.
Hopefully more than one. Hello, ladies. No. So my wife went to go see Morgan Wallen like a year ago at SoFi, the big football stadium out here, and she was like, it was terrible. There was no interaction. He didn't leave the mic. He didn't do anything. He just sang. And I don't like his music. She does. But I'm like, that's the worst. If you're going to see somebody that you really enjoy their music and there's just nothing, it's just like you might as well just put a speaker on a PA and be like, like what are we doing here? Like there needs to be some sort of like pull and release and wave. And I think you guys do that really well.
I think what I will say to certain people, I mean, like, I loved Eric Clapton, right? Like I haven't seen him for a long time, but like, and if Clapton said, other than the famous outburst, if Clapton said more than about 3 words in an entire show, that's a lot. He didn't need to do that. And I think that there's nothing wrong with that, and just because artists are playing live in front of a lot of people doesn't instantly mean that they are extrovert and that like interaction with the crowd comes easy. I'm lucky that I don't mind that stuff. I'm not a particular showman, and so we get plenty of comments that say, when's Chris going to ditch the fat guy with the big voice and go and find like a proper lead singer? Do you know what I mean? And I don't care. Like, it doesn't bother me at all, right? But he knows, they don't know that he owes me a lot of money. He's got to stick around. But but like what they want is, they want Freddie Mercury, or they want,
I was just gonna say,
or they want Mick Jagger, or what, and because that's their idea of what's cool. It's never been my thing. I like both of those examples, but it's never really been my thing. And like, we played with the Struts recently on like a support tour for them, and they were lovely, great guys, great band. I felt sorry for some of their crowd because we would walk out first of all and I'd be like, fuck me, it's warm in here. Everybody all right? You know what I mean? And what they're used to is like capes and neon light and I'm going to rock you from the moment I come out, and there is going to be a wall put up between the crowd and us. There's something great about that. If you go see Guns N' Roses in their heyday, you want to be blown away by something that is unattainable to the mere mortal. Do you know what I mean? That you want to have a rock star blow you off your feet. And that isn't me. It just isn't my way. My way is to go, and I've got told this a few times by people that, you know, I respect their opinion, frankly, but the idea that it's the opposite thing, right? It's like, I'm going to put my arm around you as a crowd and say, you're in good hands for the next 90 minutes, 2 hours, whatever it is. You can relax now. Do you know what I mean? You're part of this with me. And it's much more of an osmosis between the crowd and the band, I think, that interaction. But to your point, I mean, yeah, I don't want to go out and see, you know, I mean, like, I loved the Dave Matthews Band for a long, long time, and I've managed to see them a lot of times when they were over the UK, which is not that much. And I've seen them simultaneously back to back on 2 nights. And almost half of the set is just entirely different. And then they would like learn encores, 2 or 3 songs as an encore, which would be songs that were relevant to something happening in that moment, you know, in the zeitgeist, to an incredible standard, you know, and they are a live band through and through, you know, and I guess that's where I've always wanted to be. And like you said, organism is the right word. And there are movements within the personnel of the band, right? You know, it's the core band is me, Adam, and Chris, and then we've been lucky enough to have Tay and Greg and the players like that have put up with us long enough to stick around for a long, long time. But you know that will change, and but even that, there's something beautiful in that. I mean, because they're incredibly talented and have better things to do than play with us, frankly. But whoever comes in will bring another slant to that, and there's something nice about that it'll be a slightly different flavor to that, and that organism moves again, you know. And I think it's not to be underestimated, the power of that kind of live music show when you are sat there thinking this could all go wrong. I think it was Justin Hawkins, Darkness, that said every now and then, just to keep himself entertained, he throws a little fuck out there. Do you know what I mean? He just does something wrong almost to keep the band on their toes, because otherwise playing every night and you're cycling through the same 15, 16 songs.
It's repetitive, yeah.
You want it to be good for you as well. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, I don't know whether I'm going to do that to Chris, you know, just
That's why I never understood bands who had the same set every single night, because it's like, I'd be so fucking bored. Constantly playing the same songs in the same order, the same, you know,
we definitely
jokes
do that
to the crowd.
I think it's one of the reasons that, like, my favorite shows that, like, kind of thinking back of the shows that we've done recently or just ever, I guess, my favorite shows are not necessarily the ones where I've played well or we've played well collectively as a band. It's where it's flowed and it's felt like a kind of really organic kind of process, and this sort of interaction and exchange between the crowd and the band. That's the ones that stick in my mind, you know, as just an enjoyable evening from start to finish. And you kind of end up thinking, I hope that was as good as it, you know, was for you as it was for me.
Cardinal Black, I hope it's as good for you as it was for me.
Yeah, exactly. It's the third album. Just that, you know, kind of that interaction is what it's all about for me. That creates a variable where if it's, you know, sorry, keep talking over you, Tommy. No, if that's where, I guess, the downside of that is that it does make it a little bit variable from night to night. And, you know, one night may be amazing and you have the time of your life, and then the show after, for the crowd at least, might be the best thing they've ever seen. But for me, at least, or whatever, I didn't feel like it had gone as well as it did the night before. So it creates this kind of slight tension then as to kind of like trying to replicate things, which I don't think is healthy.
Right out of the gate, Tommy split his pants at the Troubadour. So we had that. We had that to go on. So the night was already in a great... Yeah.
Editing that footage I mentioned from the Troubadour earlier, there's a great bit of footage of you in the dressing room duct taping up your trousers. So, it didn't make the video.
Me, and I hope he doesn't mind me saying this, but like where me and Chris will differ sometimes, and I think I want to punch him around the face and say, but I also understand... I'd say nothing, but I also understand where it comes from. Chris has had a level of pressure that I have not had. And so... Because for any time Chris plays a down chord, there are phones out watching. And that is the nature of the beast these days, right? Whereas I've never really had that. And Chris has allowed me to kind of almost go through back channels into some modicum of notoriety, if you want to put it that way. And as a result, I'm pretty good at going, well, judge me as a whole by the last 100 shows. You know, everybody has a bad day, or, you know, you flatten a couple of notes, or you've got a cold if you're a singer, whatever that thing is. And if it's Chris and you're 3 strings down by the seventh song and you're like, this ain't my night, and then the amp's gone and whatever, there's a beautiful skill in being able to say, and like not to over, you know, romanticize it, but you're on stage with a group of people that become a bubble on tour and like are your family. And the moment you can look behind you, if you're the lead singer, and say, everybody has got my back, then get out of your own shell and into that kind of atmosphere. And if one of you's dropping something for whatever reason, and we've all done that, then the other guys can pick you up and carry you a little bit. And you just get through the day because you're an entertainer and it's the show must go on, right? And if you get too bogged down in your own head of that wasn't great for me tonight, then it can get in your head for the next couple of shows. And we haven't got time for that. Like we're punishing the guys who come to the show tomorrow night, right? Like, because now you're in a, this is not named at Chris, by the way, I'm just saying generally, but like we've all done that.
Absolutely
but like,
is.
Now you're no, it's not. I promise it isn't. But like we've all done it. Like everybody in the band, everybody in every band has done it. Where you kind of go into something.
Yeah, put it to the side.
You got to put it to the side, and so my way out of that sometimes is to joke and is to be self-deprecating and is to call myself fat and whatever that thing is, and to level to kind of bring down that bar a little bit and lower that bar. And it's interesting.
Lower their expectations.
But that's exactly what that is, right? It's lower their expectations. And like, you know, for the longest time at the start of the band's career, and it just so happens that I tour manage the band as well. So that doesn't help because I will purposely go into a new venue, especially bigger venues where nobody's going to know who I am. And I introduce myself as a tour manager, and the way that they will treat me and then the way they treat me after sound check once I've sung is 2 different people, right? And which is bollocks, and it shouldn't be like that, but it just is the way that it is. I've now realized that all that is a defense mechanism for myself, you know, that I can go, well, I've lowered the bar now to the point where I could stumble and fall over it, you know, and anything else is going to be good.
And anybody who's heard any of your music can say, well, this guy can fucking sing. Like, dude, you grew up on what, Paul Simon and James Taylor and gospel and blues. Like that was I can't imagine being a teenager and that's where your head's at and your soul is at. Like, is it then hard to, you're an old soul. Like how do you sing from an old soul's perspective?
Man. Since the moment I've known Tom, he's been about 45. Like Benjamin Button, you've got younger, if anything.
Is it hard to convince people that you singing from that place is authentic when you're younger? Now that you're older, it's easier. But like, would it have been harder for people to believe that you mean this?
Yeah, the two common things have always been like that. Like you sing and people are. It's like who knows, right? It's some people's skill set is to put that on, and that some people can do that incredibly convincingly. The giveaway with me is I'm an extremely emotional bloke, so there'll be often at least once a night where I'll just cry as I'm singing. Do you know what I mean? And you know, if I could cry on demand I'm in the wrong job. Yeah, no, I don't give a fuck about that. Do you know what I mean? I'm completely safe in my masculinity, but yeah, I'll be singing about a song about my daughter or something, and I'll just break down. Do you know what I mean? So I got to work on that. But and I'm telling my therapist about it as we speak. But the other thing is like I quite commonly get like we had it on a post that we did the other day saying like, why does he sing in an American accent? And the truth of the matter is, Mick Jagger? Yeah, I've never ever tried that. I mean, it's obviously because the majority of my influences growing up have all been American artists, right? And also there's something really lovely about that kind of transatlantic kind of the way that rhyming happens, the softer plosives in American accents than like harsh regional UK accents at times. And there's something lovely about that as well. But it's just not like I was never conscious. I started gigging when I was 12, 13 years of age. That's what came out. Never had a lesson, never whatever. But yeah, so yeah, to the music obviously has influenced that, you know, and Chris will laugh, but essentially it's like about 3 James Taylor albums. It's like about 3 Paul Simon albums. It's a load of John Martin. And that's about it, really, on rotation forever. I don't know why I've got Spotify, because I just buy those records. It would save me a fucking ton of money.
You know what we thought when we were at the show? My family all thought it was like Chris Stapleton. A lot.
Who's that?
You don't know who Chris Stapleton is? Stop it.
Of course I do, yeah. Well, that's a massive compliment. Thank you very much. I mean, they're completely wrong, obviously, but I appreciate the compliment.
I want to talk about solos for just a second, because I know this, like I said, this band is way more than just a guitar solo. It's songwriting. But you were bestowed the honor of having a top 15 guitar solo of the 21st century from Guitar World, right? Tell me how it feels. And
there's clearly not been many guitar solos in the 21st century.
Well, that is true. Guitar solos have not been as prominent. But I want to know about your process for the guitar solo, for the lead, because do you write it? Do you just kind of go and you kind of blank out like in old school with Will Ferrell on the debate stage, or our favorite lead player is Mike McCready, obviously behind me. Yeah. He has said how he doesn't write anything. He's just in the moment, and if it's not the first or second take, he doesn't want to do it because he gets in his head about it and he thinks they're bad. So what is your process and approach to the guitar solo?
Exactly that. I'm looking at Tom smiling. Yeah, I'm definitely a 1 or 2 take guy. I mean, the reality is, as much as the actual take that you hear on the record may be the culmination of a fair few takes, the actual structure of the solo, or the kind of bare bones of the solo, comes together very quickly. It varies from track to track. This record actually was interesting in the sense that January came close. By the time that we got around to recording that record, a lot of those tracks were very old, and I'd had a long time to live with them, whether that was a year or so, or whether that was 10 years. There were a couple of older tracks on there. And what inevitably happens in that process is that you just start to kind of subconsciously accumulate this kind of idea of what the solo should sound like, and a start, a middle, and an end. And whether that's through trial and error on tour, as to kind of, that bit works, so I'll do that bit again tonight. But the first bit, that was a bit weak, so I'll maybe take a different path on that. And naturally, over time, it evolves into what you might hear on the record. The reality with the second record is that we didn't have that kind of grace, I guess. We didn't have the time of touring it. By the time that we toured any of those tracks, the record was finished. So what actually happened on most of those tracks was that it's hard to explain, really. I mean, Holding My Breath is a good example in terms of a track that the demo of that we put down the day me and Tom kind of fleshed that out into the track that you kind of hear on the record. We actually went away, did a kind of like a little writing getaway, the two of us, a nice little romantic couple of days away. Yeah, on a vineyard of all places, conveniently. But we put down a demo of that track, a very rough demo, and I'll send it over later. The solo on that demo is pretty much note for note the solo that you hear on the record. And that was just what I played in that moment. And all I can equate that to is that while I'm listening to Tom track vocals, or while I'm listening to him kind of writing a vocal melody, I'm subconsciously taking kind of cues from that, and it starts to formulate in my head, as to what that should be and what that should sound like.
So is the lead always after vocals? So you have a way to kind of bounce off of him?
Yeah, I mean, just from a kind of a practical perspective, even if it's just rehearsing those tracks or writing those tracks, you will have a fairly good sense of what the vocal melody. No, not necessarily in a recording sense, but in a sense of having spent a good amount of time writing those tracks in a rehearsal room or in a studio. I'm, again, consciously or not, all of my cues come from the vocal melody. There was a Marcus King quote I read recently, I think, which he attributed to his father, which was, if you don't want to reference the vocal melody in your guitar solo, your vocal melody's not worth a damn, or words to that effect.
Interesting.
Which kind of seems quite prescient. That's something, I guess, which subconsciously I've been doing for a very long time, is listening to Tom, listening to his phrasing, listening to vocal melodies, and trying to incorporate that in some way, shape, or form into the solo. But it varies from track to track. I mean, Tell Me How It Feels, to kind of reference that track, that was an unusual one in the sense that when we recorded that was such a new song that I think maybe even by the time that we were actually recording the guitar solo on that, the vocal melody wasn't entirely finalized. It was very new. And there was this fairly big blank canvas of a section of a solo, which I knew needed to have a start, middle, and an end, but didn't really have any of those pieces in place, because I'd not really spent any time with it. So that took shape quite organically, just in the studio, kind of piecing it together almost, and knowing that I want to start low and I want to aim high. But the rest of it was kind of down to chance, really. So, that might have taken a very different path,
Chris often talks about the fact that if he has a signature move at all, it's the fact that it's the melody of vocal, very kind of like reminiscent of like almost like a slideless Derek Trucks for me at times. You know what I mean? That kind of idea of it just flows more like a vocal melody because that's more of a linear thing, than strings and frets.
It's a very, very vocal style of playing a guitar solo. I don't know what you would call them technically, but those secondary bends that you do all the time, bend. What would you call that?
I don't know. I've never multi-step bends, I guess, is the only name that I've heard attributed to them. But it's precisely that.
From now on,
the buck bends. It's precisely that. It's trying to sound like a.
That's when you go too deep into Chris and come back up again.
Yeah, too quickly.
Yeah,
and end up with scurvy or whatever. Not scurvy. what do you get? Yeah, the bends.
The bends. Yeah,
the bends.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
The clue was in the name, really, wasn't it? I'll get my coat.
Tom. Let's talk about some of these songs more specifically. I want to reference the fact that you had a rugby accident and that's why you're playing music now, right? You want to be a rugby guy in Vancouver. Yeah. And that didn't work out. Car accident, said no. That's a traumatic.
That was why you didn't become a professional rugby player, yeah.
Let's just go with that. Let's go with that timeline. Don't, yeah. Come on, Chris. God damn it. But honestly, that's got to be a dispiriting and heartbreaking and traumatic experience to be like, fuck, my dream is not going to happen. I have to do something else. I got to pivot. And there's a song called "Keep on Running," lead single, and that's kind of traumatic too about your buddy at school having a stalker. How does one write lyrics and sing from the point of view of somebody who maybe has not experienced a stalker or the kind of grief or trauma that you're writing about? How do you inhabit that?
Yeah, I mean, and thank you for bringing it up. And firstly, can I just clarify that I am not the stalker in question on that song?
No, I know you're not. That's why I said.
I think you feel the protest too much.
Yeah, I know, but I just feel the need to bring that up all the time. I enjoy writing. I don't profess to be a particularly good lyricist. I enjoy writing songs from the point of like micro moments in life. So rather than it be very broad, concepts about politics or about love or whatever, I rather go in and fire into, instead of that broad love story, let's think about what they were doing at that moment, why that moment kind of happened the way it did, what were the outside effects of that. And, Keep on Running is, like you say, it's about a girl I knew in university that was getting stalked, and probably that would have been called out a lot easier and a lot quicker now. I've never touched upon the subject of the kind of rugby accident thing. That was we were lucky genuinely to be alive after that, to be honest. Right. We ended up going down, we hit a block of ice. We were on the way to a place called Kerepesi, about 3 hours, I guess, I can't remember, 3 hours north of Vancouver, and it was 22nd, 23rd of December. And pitch black. It turned out they hadn't gritted what was essentially a motorway, a highway in the mountain. We had the cliff face of the mountain to our left, and we had a frozen river about 40 yards to our right, down 40 yards, 40 feet rather. And we clipped a piece of ice on the side of the road after swerving slightly. We were like 30 mile per hour, and it turned, and we hit a big slab of ice that had just kind of accumulated by lorries and stuff, kind of brushing it to one side. At which point I've put my head through the passenger window, and it's completely knocked me out. So we then go, I'm told by the other three lads, it was the lad I was with and a friend of ours actually from Wales had come over, and then the driver was Canadian, no fault of his, but we had kind of gone end over end. And we had landed, luckily, wheels first down on a frozen river, and we had not gone through the river, which completely blew my mind. Yeah. And my point is, if we'd landed on the roof, I genuinely think we'd be dead. We like the roof came in between myself and the driver, so I couldn't see him. And then I came to when we'd landed on the river, and I thought we had just stopped on the road. So I get out of go into like dad mode, and I'm like, right, everybody all right? And I get out of the window, and I manage to climb out the window so I can open the door. And I just start walking up what I think is the road. Of course, I'm walking up the middle of a frozen river. So the boys are like, whoa, whoa, And I distinctly remember we couldn't get back up the banking because it was that iced over and that kind of steep that we couldn't get up. And we were trying to flag down every 20 minutes a car would go past. And the one thing that, even though the keys had come out of the engine, all this kind of stuff, a headlight remained on. And it was back when you had compact discs, CDs. So CDs in his visor just got everywhere. And I remember getting a CD and using it against the light to call the attention of a pickup truck. And being Canada, he had a length of rope and a hockey stick and was able to pull us up one by one. Then we flagged down an 18-wheeler because there's no mobile reception. So we get a CB radio on one of the trucks coming past. We call the police. And then, no joke, a lady called Noelle, who was one of the senior claims adjuster people of Vancouver, because I guess at the time, I don't know whether I'm wrong in remembering this, it's almost like a statewide policy of insurance rather than we have, which is individual on the car. And she was she gave her card and was like, look, I've seen it all. It's all legitimate. If you've got any problems with this, you've got to come and let me know and we'll help out. Yeah, Noelle on the 23rd of December or whatever it was.
Wow.
And but the strangest part of that the whole night was, the police turn up and they're like, we were the fifth accident on that huge stretch of road that night because they hadn't gritted it. So then one of my Canadian mates, Canadian friend who's driving, one of his family friends turn up, who's a 70-year-old farmer from the middle of nowhere, and he's in a truck, and we all jump in this truck. And in order to test that the brakes were fine and that we weren't going to slide again, we would just sort of settle down into a calm 30-mile-per-hour cruise. You just fucking slam the brakes on every now and then.
Why would you
never
do
shit
that?
myself so in my life. But So anyway, that's my tragic car accident story. But it inevitably it damaged all the ligaments in my arm. I wasn't able to play for the remainder of that season. I had fallen out of love a little bit. So I know you on the Hollywood story of me really kind of going, oh my God, I don't think, I was a good rugby player, but I think the fact that I'm drinking every 5 seconds on you probably alludes to the fact I wasn't professional enough. But so and then it just made my mind up for me, which was I'll probably end up going back. I'm no use to the team that I was playing for, and I'll go to university and I'll do the music thing and see where that goes.
Well, in Chris, I mean, as some may know, your father passed away about 1.5 years ago. That's a traumatic and very grieving situation. Do you put it through your guitar playing? Is that how you deal with that?
I guess so, yeah. Tom would attest to the fact I certainly don't talk about it. That's not really kind of my way, I guess. Tom is a talker, as you will have gathered. I mean, everyone deals with things in different ways, don't they? Right. Different situations and how they process those. And it's, I think probably subconsciously, I'm not consciously thinking about this is my release. This is my way of speaking my soul, Sure. But on a subconscious level, it probably is. I think, I don't know. Honestly, I've never really given it much thought. It's one of those things that I guess I'm slightly scared of giving too much thought process to, because the moment you do, I'm definitely guilty of overthinking things and kind of, trying to kind of legislate for the myriad ways that something might turn out or how something might go and what happens if this happens, how do we react, what, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the moment I try and overthink why I do something on stage or why I play in the way that I do, I'm probably at risk of losing the ability to do so. But
would you say then, Chris, that the tremolo effect on push pull is a conscious decision? Because gorgeous song, but that felt it felt like it was very intentional. The push and the pull is obvious,
I guess, again, subconsciously, kind of not to try and attribute meaning to things which weren't necessarily there at the time, but so much of this stuff is subconscious that, kind of, we knew pretty quickly that track was going to be called Push Pull. So that was a relatively unusual one, I guess, and that's pretty much the only song that we've ever done with the band where I contributed anything lyrically. Get more of me, Tommy.
Tom is stripping, by the way, for all of our audio only listeners.
stripping off in the background. Down at just his
spoiling the continuity. I'm fucking gonna melt. Sorry, I'm so sorry.
Down to his briefs, yeah. Push Pull was an unusual one in the sense that, like I said, that was one of the few times, or the only time I think to date, that I've contributed anything lyrically to a track. And it obviously it's a song about my dad, but it was again that kind of sort of caught me off guard a little bit. That the kind of the musical side of that song was actually a track that I'd kind of put down in voice memo form on an old iPhone.
Wow.
Me and Tom were talking about this in an interview the other day. I kind of found the whole process of writing the second record a little daunting, just because obviously you finish up touring the first record. It's quite a exhausting experience, kind of physically and emotionally, I guess, kind of out there doing this for a long time. And then you get home. Everyone gives you about a fortnight to kind of recover. And then it's like, right, second record, what have you got? And Tom is very good at writing on demand or sitting down with something and kind of, not forcing something to come out, but kind of being able to work at it until it does. That's not me. And unless something comes in the first 20 seconds of picking up a guitar, that's not the day I'm going to write a song, But consequently, I was kind of a little bit nervous as to kind of the second record. So my fallback is always to go back through voice notes on my phone, just because I record stuff constantly. If something comes to me in a moment, whether it's at a sound check, whether it's kind of you go through a checkout at a supermarket and you'll kind of maybe have like a kind of little chord progression idea or a melodic idea, I'll just record them into my phone. And I dug out. I've got a drawer in my house full of like the last 4 iPhones that I've had.
Do you have? By the way, sorry to cut you off, but like you're speaking to something that I've done as an amateur dude, where it's like, you go to the voice note, you record a little riff, but do you also like tell yourself, okay, this is an open D tuning, and I've got the Klon on with the Warthog. And do you see all the settings and shit too? So
the funny thing is, more often than not, it's me whistling into my phone. Like I said, it might be in a supermarket. And what's really funny about that, and me and Tom have spoken about this as well, is the lack of context to that in about 6 months' time when you listen back to it. And you will have invariably put like a little NB in the title, kind of asterisk, like, this is good, use this. and then you listen back to it in 6 months' time, and it's me going, and you think, in the moment, that was amazing. I had this like orchestral thing going in my head. It was symphonic. It was, fully embellished. It was everything. And then you listen back to it devoid of that context. And you're like, what the fuck was that? And that moment is gone forever. So, but one of the ideas, there were a couple actually in old phones that I found. So like I said, I've got a drawer full of old phones, just started charging those up and going back to the voice notes on them. And there were a couple of different things, and there was Your Spark, there was the chord progression for Your Spark, there was Push Pull, there was an earlier version of Ride Home. So a couple of like musical ideas for those tracks just existed in a drawer on different iPhones. Had some lyrics that I kind of sung over the top of it, which I guess subconsciously or consciously was kind of dealing with having lost my dad. And I sent that over to Tom, and he's like, "That's cool. That sounds more like a middle eight though to me. Can I run with that?" And the next time that we arrived at rehearsal, that kind of the track was almost fully there, the kind of musical side had kind of been fully there anyway, but Tom had gone away and kind of written the track infinitely more eloquently than I ever could have, but stuff like that, that kind of the throb, I guess, or the kind of push and pull of that tremolo effect, subconsciously on some level probably was a very conscious choice.
It's the first thing I noticed was
cool.
Wow, this is like a really cool, some people might be like, that's really obvious. Push, pull, tremolo, in and out. I thought it fit perfectly.
Funny little side note on that, which didn't make the final mix, unfortunately, or not. Fortunately or unfortunately, I don't know. It may have been
whistling?
Too distracting. No, it was me whistling the melody. Yeah. So a little bit of geeky info. The amp that was recorded on was a 1963 Fender Vibroverb, which in the like Fender amp world is kind of a very rare beast. It was they had a very short run of them. It was the first amp that I'd ever simultaneously put tremolo and reverb in, which obviously set the kind of precedent for Fender amps going forward. Beautiful sounding amp. So we used that to record, but it was just off the back of doing the Your Spark solo, which was loud, aggressive, amp up to 11, kind of territory. And I think rattled it half to death. Because then when we were recording Push Pull, which obviously is so isolated and quiet comparatively, the tremolo effect on it was making the amp rattle. So there was this kind of like weird, almost sounded like kind of bird chirping every time that the kind of trem would kind of make it kind of kick in. Yeah. And we were listening back to it, and I quite liked it. I thought it was a little unique and a little kind of just a little weird artifact or a kind of idiosyncrasy of the recording process. And then David Benjamin, who mixed the record, I don't know how he did it, works of magic, because by the time we heard the first mix, it had miraculously gone. So I don't know what did that, but I think on the whole, it was probably for the best, because it was there throughout the entirety of the track, and it was like a little, I don't know, a little kind of blue tit or something, kind of whistling in.
I was going to ask you, for our guitar nerds who are watching or listening, which tremolo pedal you would have used, but obviously it was the amp itself.
No, it wasn't actually. It was so the tremolo in the amp is like a kind of bias tremolo, so just like a typical kind of amplitude tremolo.
This is harmonic?
Tremolo, yeah, it's harmonic tremolo, which it was sacrilegiously, given the rest of the signal chain was pretty much about as analog as it gets. It was a Line 6 HX stomp. So there we go. Sacrilegious.
Wow. All right. There is a Pearl Jam song called "Comes and Goes," and it's an ode to someone.
What's the name of that band again? Sorry,
Pearl Jam. Have you heard of them?
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually do like. Believe it or not.
Okay, you don't have to on the show. It just
No, I don't like them for their music. It's terrible, but I love the. I love them sticking it to the man with Ticketmaster and Live Nation back in the day. Yeah. Who also selling tickets for a couple of our shows on the run. Lovely guys. Genuine people.
Easy on Tommy. Yeah.
Well, fortunately, the Troubadour doesn't sell on Ticketmaster, so it's fine.
I noticed within about an hour of our show in Canada, in Toronto, selling out, you could buy Ticketmaster tickets for it resale for like $150. I'd just like to point out that's nothing to do with us. Unless we get the money, in which case I'm fine with that.
Sure. We had a whole episode last year on ticketing with Ticketmaster and this band for their tour last year, and it was a whole thing. I swear to God, I had a point. Oh yeah. So this song, it's called "Comes and Goes." It's about. I mean, Eddie wrote it about Chris Cornell. I have to assume it's a very lovely ballad about someone who you've lost, but it's just him and a guitar. And we asked the song and the record's producer, Josh Evans, why is the rest of the band not on this? Like all the guys in the band knew Chris Cornell. They were all friends with him. Why wouldn't they want to contribute something? And what Josh did is he quoted Thelonious Monk, who said, "Don't play everything. Some music is just imagined. What you don't play can be more important than what you do play." Does that thought process ever come into your head because this song is just guitar and vocals as well? Do you ever think about that kind of like the inverse, the negative?
No, everyone else in the band hated my father. No, it was, I think, like from a very, very early point.
That was so good.
Yeah. From a very early point, that track was only ever going to be me and Tom. I think we, one of the kind of things that we did in the writing process for the second record was after me and Tom had a little romantic getaway in a cottage, we booked a wedding venue, actually, a barn in kind of mid-Wales in the middle of nowhere, and went away as a band and spent a couple of days kind of fleshing out these tracks into full band arrangements. And from that point, which was very early in that process, before it even had lyrics, it was clear that was just so bare bones, so kind of exposed and stripped and isolated that it kind of needed to be nothing more really than guitar or vocal. And I guess on some kind of slightly scheming or kind of contrived level, it kind of probably factored into our thinking that we didn't have that kind of song on the record. So it kind of made sense that that's that kind of quiet, tender moment, I guess, So from an arc of the narrative of the structure of the record sort of perspective, and from the what turned into the kind of lyrical content, the kind of content and the meaning behind that track, I think it suited it in all respects, really.
We must have rehearsed that song like 3 times ever because of its subject matter and it being a bit difficult, and also the fact that you're in a room with other band members and you kind of go, "Oh, don't worry about Pushbowl, we'll do that on our own another time, we don't want to waste your time, let's move on to the full band stuff," or whatever. So as a result, that was kind of probably one of the, and of course you rehearse it, and like, again, I'm crying. I mean, Chris doesn't shed a tear ever. I'm crying like a baby. Do you know what I mean? And there's this moment after, like, kind of when we knew, I think that subconsciously that the song was done, and like that's the song. The lyrics are there, the melodies are there. That's it. there's this moment of like, all right, yeah, good. Yeah, you? Yeah, all right then, cool. Stiff up the lip and walk out. Let's go talk about boobs. It's like, so when we went into the studio and recorded it, like, fuck me, like it was fun for Chris, apparently. Jesus, I was not enjoying that process because he's like, genuinely, he's like my brother. He's like my younger brother. And there was such a moment of like wanting to get it right for Chris. Do you know what I mean? And it is extremely difficult to do that. I go out and I'll sing in front of 10,000 people and it's all right because it's noisy and it's buzzy and whatever. Not that I ever have, but to sing in front of 2 people in a studio and the lights are down low, and also just because we're not playing to a click or anything in that track, and it is as you hear it. I mean, even to the point where David Benjamin, the guy who was mixing it, he sent back, if I remember rightly, the first draft where he kind of gated the vocals slightly so we could get rid of like a lot of the just room hiss and breath noises and stuff in between my vocal parts. And we were like, put it back in, like just leave it completely as it is, and that's what you're hearing. But there's also a timing thing there. You've got the tremolo, which doesn't instantly be, fall in time often with what we're playing and singing. It's a little bit of an ebb and flow there. And like wanting to get the plosive notes on the bar notes, especially like push da 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 da. To have you get 3/4 into a full take and you're like, don't fuck this up, and he's sat in front of me and I'm like over the top of his shoulder, because if I could see him I wouldn't be able to get through it. Do you know what I mean? And it's incredibly difficult. We do it sometimes live and I'm like, don't look at me, and he's like,
hide behind the drum kit.
Like,
Two funny moments with that track in very different contexts was when we finished that. The boys in the band had been upstairs playing pool or whatever it was. We kind of asked them to bugger off for a little bit just so we could record that track. Kind of called them back in to listen to it, and everyone sat there, and it's this kind of like potentially emotional, kind of tender moment. And all I remember leaping out to me was we got as far as the start of the middle 8 with that push until feel a little closer. Gets that note, and I'm like, that's flat, Tom, flat. So ever pragmatic. But the other funny thing which springs to mind with that track is Tom is absolutely terrified of fucking up the words to it. I guess again because it's very lyrical. It kind of, there's not a lot of repeated words in that. It's kind of changes every verse and etc. etc. He's terrified of cocking up the words to it, which I don't think you've ever done today. You interchange you and I and kind of stuff like that, but never drastically.
Yeah, but when you interchange you and I, when you're talking from the perspective of someone who's lost their father, it's a pretty big. There's a line saying, "Don't laugh." There's a line that's it resolves in the chorus line, if you like, with "I'll be waiting on the ground for you." Now, if you change that to "You'll be waiting on the ground for me," it's a whole different meaning. Now we're getting haunted. We can't have that. Sorry, Chris.
The way getting around this was he asked Brendan, our front of house engineer, who, as well as front of house engineer, kind of gets tasked with myriad tasks throughout the day, usually on tour, one of which is to print our set lists. And usually merch pricing and any kind of stuff that needs printing. We'll send him off to the bowels of the venue trying to find a printer. And one of the things he was tasked with printing off was the lyrics for Push Pull. So he comes back having printed them in like size 8 font on like on the world's smallest piece of paper. Exactly, yeah. Which, given Tom's glasses like milk bottle tops anyway. Vision. Yeah. Gets taped to the monitor. Tom's on his hands and knees trying to read it every night. So it's given the subject matter, it's not without a bit of brevity with Relate Live.
There is one more story about that Chris was saying is a guitar-based one. There's every now and then, I mean all the time, people try and cover Chris's guitar work online, and that's really lovely and flattering, I'm sure, and probably very annoying and boring for Chris. But he won't say it. He says it to me all the time. And the opening line, do do do, and there was a cover that Chris got where they've, I guess, flattened or sharpened one of the notes,
I've got a guitar. I'll try and play it because it's funny to try and play it. So
where's the rev star? Come on, man.
Oh, I don't know. It's with 4 strings at present, so I just grabbed this one as a bit of a kind of prop in the background. So the riff, if hopefully this picks this up.
Yeah.
So someone covered that online and changed that second note to the major third, at which point it becomes
Sesame Street.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, it totally changes the kind of inflection on it. Yeah, at which point it kind of sounds like a supermarket announcement. But
you guys have been doing these really funny North America at 90-second videos. It's kind of like lead up to the tour and the record coming out. Again, coming to North America in August. Get your tickets now. Use Ticketmaster if you have to. But your drummer, we mentioned him, Adam Roberts. He posted something recently that included a brief cameo of Tom.
As I recall, I had Hangar Roof Doom recording this one after some fairly hefty rum and cokes pulled by Tommy H the night before.
Let's see it again in super slow-mo. Oh, yeah.
Get into the cock. Get into the
Come
cock
on.
shot.
Zoom in. How about one more time? Oh, yeah. Look at that.
23 stone 11.
Oh,
You can almost see my penis.
you can almost see it. That is
The last thing to leave the frame.
That is lovely. All that. I have a question and a comment. The comment is nice gams, Tom. The question, my friend, is for the both of you. I want to know what cover have you guys not played besides that lovely rendition of "I Have Nothing" by Whitney Houston that you would want to cover now in a set for Cardinal Black?
Good question.
I was thinking about
it. Thank you.
We've never really covered tracks. The only track that we've ever covered live, obviously, I think the caveat here is I haven't done the covers thing for like 10 years. I think all of us are a little bit bored of playing other people's songs. So probably understandably, we've never kind of leaned into the cover thing too heavily. The only cover that we ever kind of toured consistently was Tom's suggestion, actually. It was Little Bird by Annie Lennox. Which I think is right. I'm right in saying that's an Annie Lennox track and not a Eurythmics track, but it's obviously Annie Lennox singing on either way. And we kind of inadvertently ended up turning that into Down in the Flood, which is this is convoluted, a cover of a cover of a cover. So we kind of ended up turning it into Derek Truck's cover of the Bob Dylan track, Down in the Flood, albeit it was a cover of Little Bird by Annie Lennox. It's on YouTube. It was cool. It sounded pretty good, but for whatever reason, we didn't kind of really stick with that. The only other track that we've very nearly covered, and I wish we had, because we'd probably be millionaires now, is way before it exploded because of Stranger Things. We nearly ended up covering
Master
Kate
Puppets.
Exactly. Yeah, Master Puppets. No, we nearly, about 6 months before that series aired, we did Kate Bush. What was the track? Running Up That Hill?
That hill.
Yeah, and Tom again suggested that, and we kind of worked on it for a little bit, and we're kind of struggling to sort of just find a way to kind of make it work, so we kind of shelved the idea. But in light of everything that happened with that track, only a few months later, I wish we had.
Have we got a limit on the amount of time I'm allowed to take?
No, I'm going to edit it all down anyways.
It'll be 90 seconds on Instagram by the time we're done.
90-second reel on Instagram.
Oh, this is all just going to be a reel.
Just me increasingly getting drunk.
You'll be all night if you.
Actually, speaking of reels, I the last thing I want to ask you is about this day and age of social media and art being digestible in such quick ways and how it's consumed, and then you're on to the next thing. And like how do you guys mitigate or combat that with this life cycle of art? I mean, besides drinking rum and cokes and singing karaoke, of course, but like how do you mitigate that?
It's funny, obviously, Tom, or you actually referenced the 90 seconds in North America clip earlier that we've kind of been doing, those little interview series. That's kind of our label's behest, who've kind of analysed our social media stuff and said, cool, you're doing what you're doing well, but we want to get a bit more of the personality through. We're not really getting that. I think every time that...
Tom's like, what?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. I think whenever we have meetings with our label, it invariably just descends into kind of, banter at various points. And I think they picked up on that relatively earlier on and kind of wanted to try and get that across in a more public forum. So they kind of imposed this, what was the ratio? 70-20-10. 70% personality, 20% music, 10% like hard sell, buy our tickets or buy our record or pre-order, et cetera, et cetera. So we've been making a conscious effort to kind of engage with the social media thing a little bit more and kind of make that a little bit more fun and not just music or tour dates or kind of quite matter-of-fact stuff. So
right.
I don't think it comes easily to any of us. I don't think it's something that, given the choice, any of us would be kind of falling over ourselves to make social media content and sit down and interview one another and edit that and et cetera, et cetera. But it's the nature of the beast. You have to kind of do it. You have to play the game, if you want to be involved in the game. And it's just what it is, really. And, ironically, since we started doing that, I think we've seen a bit of an uptick in terms of how many people are following us on social media. So it seems to be working. But I say this, Tommy TikTok there is in charge exclusively of our TikTok page. I have no idea how that's going, by the way. So smashing it, presumably. If we're not viral TikTok sensations already.
We've absolutely gone viral. I mean, get the slow motion cock shot on TikTok. That will fucking blow up.
TikTok. In more ways than one. In more ways than one.
Cock talk. My point. Sorry, serious now. Keep it, boys. Keep it going. I love kind of longer form stuff like this. Obviously, I'm not against doing it. I think, ironically, like all three of us are pretty good on camera.
I think Adam's very good, by the way. I think he likes it.
Yeah, I do too. And I think we'll never tell him. Yeah, and I think that bit of it, like we've always just been at ease around other people's company, and I've always been at ease, kind of making each other laugh. That's just, I guess, where we're from and how we get through the day a little bit. But it's when it's a case of right now, do that because other people want to see it. I've always been like, that's crazy. Like, I get why people might want to hear me sing because I've tried to do that thing. There's a production level to it. And we talk about this a lot, the idea that we're at an age where we've firmly got one foot in both camps. We can remember a time before social media and we can remember a time when, going back to that kind of Guns N' Roses analogy earlier, the fact that you love Slash and you fell in love with Axl Rose wasn't because you knew how they like to take their coffee in the morning. It was because of this. It was because of the mystique around them, and it was because they were unattainable and they were a different thing. And that you want that sense of magic. We fall foul sometimes of talking a lot about running a business, and we talk a lot about, because I think it's important. I think it's empowering the young artists coming through that they understand the potential pitfalls and also the obvious ways of kind of moving your career, progressing your career slightly. I think that's really important. And I think the reason that isn't done as much is because in order to shine a light on the fact that there is more of a strategic way through this, rather than it all just be in the lap of the artistic creative gods, puts foul to the big industry leaders, who don't want that message to go out. They want it to be about, well, you can't be as successful as Prince, because Prince had this thing, right? And Prince may well have had that thing. He was a generational talent, but not all of us are, clearly. I'm talking about myself. And so there is a method to the madness. And I think the more you talk about that method, the more it puts kind of people out of work almost, who want you to believe that there is this thing that nobody else can touch, that you're above somebody else, or that you have this X factor. And I think that's kind of bullshit. And what you want,
not just that even, but it's sorry to cut across you, not just that even, the kind of talent element of it, but the actual infrastructure around that as the kind of, the gatekeepers of this is something only I can do, only I can book shows for you, or only I can promote this gig. And at every point we've kind of been the disruptors, kind of asking questions as to kind of like, okay, so why is that the case? I'm sure I can figure out what you do. Maybe, okay, I won't be able to do it as well as you do it, at least straight off the bat. but I'm very willing to learn, because if I can learn to do what you do, it's going to save us 25% or whatever, So we've always had that kind of mentality, to try and just take on as much of it as we can ourselves.
And we're not going to go on an industry rant for a second. I'm sorry. We will let you go in a second. But like, if you take that example of what Chris is, by the way, we've worked with promoters. We continue to work with agents and promoters, and we do that in certain territories. And we have a really good relationship with them, and they're great. This isn't a knock at them per se, but you have to ask yourself the question of how many young bands who have got to the level of agent or promoter representation have then not been able to keep the lights on business-wise for the next 6 months and pay themselves a bit of a... Because instead of getting, I don't know, paying a 500 cap room and getting £2,000 guarantee, what they could have been doing is filling that room themselves by the power of social media and the following that they have, circumnavigating that need for that promoter at that small level. And by the way, we are in a niche category, so we are not big enough where we need to rely on the gatekeepers, the Live Nations of this world, who literally own certain venues, right? So you've got to go through them if you want to play certain things, as you well know. We're also big enough, and we have the added bonus of Chris's reach as well, to say, well, it is a risk, but it's a very, very thought out risk where we know we have never, for example, even in our earliest tours, never put less than 150 people through a door. So you do a very quick mathematical test, and you say, well, how much at this amount of ticket sales do we need to break even on this gig? The kicker is cash flow. If you've got the cash flow to put the shows on yourself, why wouldn't you do that at this level? We are talking the difference of a few £1,000 profit off a tour and potentially £100,000 profit off a tour, right? Just because we're going on our own a little bit, But at every step, you will get people saying it can't be done like that. And so, of course, me and Chris's natural reaction to that is, let's see if that's bollocks.
Yeah.
Well, let's see if it's bollocks. But we try not to do that. Chris called himself a disruptor, and I think he is, right? And I think that's a crucial element to have. But we try not to do that by pissing on our chips, as you might say, and like pulling up the drawbridge behind us.
We call them fries here in America, Tom.
Yeah. Sorry, yeah.
No matter what we call them, he's still eating them.
Yeah.
Well, listen,
with piss on them. Anyway, you want to go now, don't you? So I'm going to, fine.
I don't want to go. My wife is calling me, but I don't want to go.
Get her on the podcast.
Oh man, she's not the kind of person to want to be in front of the camera. That's not her.
Yeah, but show her the cock. Show her the cock in the pants.
Sure. Tom's cock in the pants.
That
might do it. And you could say, I don't have nothing.
Nothing.
Right?
I wish at least it was in proportion with the rest of my body.
Well, go everybody out there in North America, go see Tom's Nothing or Something.
Yeah, please do.
This summer, August, Toronto is sold out. New York is sold out. Chicago is sold out. Minneapolis is sold out. Austin is. This is coming out later after we've recorded this, so I'm sure other places are going to be sold out. So get your tickets if they're available. Go on thecardinalblack.com.
Yeah.
And check out the tour dates and buy a record, buy a bundle, buy a t-shirt, buy a crew neck sweatshirt. And they'll sign it for you. They'll sign everything you buy, I assume.
Oh, absolutely. Whether you want us to or not. Getting hold of the unsigned ones is the rarity. They're worth a mint.
I want you guys to sign each other's names. So Tom signs Chris, Adam signs Tom, yeah.
Tom would absolutely do that in a heartbeat. If Tom could get away with never signing anything in his life, he would be all over that. I'm pretty sure I've signed his name on a couple of occasions. A couple of legal documents. Share owners in.
Well, gentlemen, this has been very fun. And like I said, midnight at the Valencia, May 23rd. It's on your screen now if you're watching in post. I would have put the album on there. And like I said, thecardinalblack.com for all of your purchasing needs. Go check them out. Chris Buck, Tom Hollister. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you for having us, man. It's been an absolute blast. Thank you.
Thank you for putting up with us. Thank you so much.
thank you again to Tom and Chris for sticking around so long. It's our second Welsh band in as many months. I don't know what it is about Cardiff. Something in the water over there, I guess. But thank you to them for coming on and talking to me for so long. We could have gone on for another probably an hour and a half, honestly. But they're great guys, and they've got a great new record coming out. I've listened to it. It's fantastic. Midnight at the Valencia, so check it out. And January Came Close, their first record. Came out a couple years ago. That one's awesome as well. And if you're in the U.S. Or Ontario, I want to say, get them on tour this August. So thecardinalblack.com, thecardinalblack.com. If you are interested in helping this show, Patreon one way and the Pod Shop is another way, so you can get a cool mug like this, or a shirt or something like that, or a hat. And I really do appreciate it. It helps keep this show moving in the right direction. And if you want to be super, super cool, you can help our fundraiser for the month of May, and that is the Jed Foundation, and they work really hard to strengthen mental health for teenagers and young adults around the country. Doing great work. A lot of these kids are suffering from mental health struggles like anxiety, suicidal thoughts, and there's a lot to be anxious about these days, so especially as a young person. So if you would be so kind as to have scanned that QR code, there's a link in our bio, donate a few bucks, $5 or more. Like I said, sticker and pin pack, and really do appreciate that. So thank you in advance. That's all I got for you this week. If you're watching on YouTube, like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications. If you're listening only, go ahead and rate, review, subscribe, feed that algorithm, Bob Dole. Right? I don't have a pen. Anyway, thank you for listening or watching. Paul will be back next week. And until then, you've been listening to or watching The State of Love and Trust.